Hello, everyone, and welcome. We'll get started in a moment, but while you're settling in, tell us in the chat where you're joining from. And since today's topic is about engagement, share one thing that you found to be engaging recently, work related or otherwise.
And it could be
Ash,
anything engaging. It doesn't have to be about course design. What are you really into right now? What's catching your attention?
from all over the country.
Oh, yeah. I can share what my son is really finding engaging right now. I don't know any other parents out there, but he is obsessed with Number Blocks, the TV show with the math things. He's completely obsessed. He's making little characters out of number blocks. So that is what has been deeply engaging to him.
I think Arlene speaks for a lot of people. She's been engaged by her local weather app.
Ooh, skiing. Jealous. It's beautifully warm here in Southern California, but that's also a
Yeah,
downside.
rub it in.
We got a severe weather alert because it's going to be in the 30s in South Florida. And I know everybody up north is laughing, but we did get a severe weather alert because we are not used to
Wow.
it.
Just
Ooh, I see
wow.
watercolor in the chat. Yeah, anything to get you off the phone for sure.
Ooh, Esther, 21 inches of snow. That's not engaging. Nope.
Ooh, Legos.
Good one.
Yeah. For those of you who are just jumping in, you can keep telling us where you're joining from and uh, something you've been finding engaging lately. Doesn't have to be work related. All right, Kevin, back to you.
All right, a few logistics before we dive in. We are recording today's webinar and we will send you the recording in an email in the next couple of days. You're welcome to use the chat throughout this session. We love an active chat, but if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature. That way we can make sure your questions don't get swallowed up. Jess Kalo, Kenneth Larson, and Jen Leckie from Cidi Labs are monitoring the Q&A, and they'll respond to you as we go. We'll also try to answer a few questions live at the end, time permitting. A little background on Cidi Labs for those of you who may not know us before today. We were founded out of a partnership with Utah State University, where Kenneth Larson, our co-founder, was working as an instructional designer. While there, he was given permission to hack Canvas, and that experiment turned into our DesignPLUS tool. Ever since then, our team has been growing with educators, instructional designers, and even former customers drawn to our mission of improving the learning experience. Today, we offer 6 Canvas integrated tools from accessibility to course lifecycle management. And all of these tools have been developed in partnership with universities and our customers. Today, in this webinar, we're going to be showing off DesignPLUS, our design suite for creating engaging content in Canvas. Our webinar today is actually the first of a 3-part series on building universal design in Canvas. Today's session focuses specifically on building inclusive engagement. Let me introduce our presenters for today. Stephanie, who you see there, is our product marketing manager, and she's our lead researcher behind our Design Matters and Accessibility Matters work. Amanda is one of our fantastic customer success managers, and I'm Kevin Franks, marketing programs manager here at Cidi Labs. We have a few other Cidi Labs team members on our webinar today. You'll see them in the chat if you haven't already. Plus, we are joined by special guests. You can see there on your screen, Janet Williams. She's a professor, instructional designer, and UDL expert. Her work focuses on making inclusive, student-centered course design practical and scalable. As a doctoral candidate, she developed Rachel, the curriculum companion, an AI-powered tool that supports student-centered course design. You'll see Rachel in action here soon. And with that, I think we can get started. I'll hand it over to you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Kevin. So when aiming to incorporate universal design for learning in your Canvas courses, there really are these two separate but related components. There's the ideas side, like creating or adjusting curriculum, lessons, and assessments to incorporate universal design principles. And then there's the building side, like actually putting those ideas and experiences into Canvas in a way that functions well and trying to do so without being some kind of coding wizard. I want to say up front that in our 3-part webinar series on building universal design in Canvas, Cidi Labs' focus is going to be on the building those elements into Canvas side. However, we all are big learning nerds here, so we do not want to leave anyone hanging on that ideas side. So in this first webinar, I want to say there is no shortage of resources for learning more about universal design and finding incredible lesson and assessment ideas. In fact, because we care so much about this, though, that's why our special guest is here today to highlight a tool she's developed to help be a resource for you on that journey. Now, I find examples super helpful, so let's use this homepage to help illustrate those two sides of universal design in Canvas. So the homepage screenshot here on this slide incorporates several universal design ideas. It features a personal introduction from the instructor that centers the learner's experiences and connections. It includes key links for getting started in the course to support learner navigation. And it even includes some institution resources for a holistic understanding of learning. However, the styling itself isn't particularly engaging. The wall of text is quite long, and there are a lot of elements to focus on without a clear hierarchy for how to digest that information. So let's compare that to the homepage example on this slide, which contains all the same content, but got a design makeover thanks to the Cidi Labs product, DesignPLUS. Now, a bit of design took the best intentions and solid principles from that previous example, right? All good stuff. We loved that. That was the ideas side. Someone was totally nailing it. But it turns those into experiences and outcomes. And I want to say this, if there's any skeptics out there like, yeah, but I could never do that. We actually have a webinar where we did this, and it took 4.5 minutes total to design the whole thing start to finish from that other page. So yes, it is absolutely possible. And this homepage now is more visually engaging, which is huge. User experience research tells us people make judgments about websites and online resources within 2 seconds based on visual design. What? Stressful. Don't worry, we've got you. But I also want to emphasize that the styling doesn't just help with aesthetics, it helps with function. There's a famous Steve Jobs quote that goes, "The design is not just what it looks like and feels like, the design is how it works." And in this redesigned homepage, the navigation is more intuitive. There's an information hierarchy through those colored headings with icons that helps the users understand the content and structure. And the resources aren't overwhelming the primary content because instead of being set vertically, they're set horizontally, which helps kind of give the sense that there are options available. So it's in this design and building area where Cidi Labs will focus today. But again, we don't want to leave you hanging before we plow right through. Let's get our bearings on thinking about universal design for learning, and our specific focus topic of engagement today. And let's think through some resources to help you with that idea side before we move on to that design side.
So we're going to start with just a quick rundown of universal design for those of you who are maybe a little less familiar with the concept. So in a nutshell, UDL, Universal Design for Learning, is an educational framework that is designed to make learning accessible and effective for all students. Janet, can you give us a brief overview?
Absolutely. So I created this graphic to boil down the most of you may have seen it, the 3 columns that Cass put out for Universal Design for Learning 3.0. So this gives us the 3 ideas, the questions. Why learners engage, what information do they need, and how is it represented? And then how do they demonstrate that they've learned it or developed proficiency of the skill? And the goal for all of those 3 questions is that we can develop as instructors multiple means of engagement, representation, and action. Excuse me, can't get it out this morning. Action and its expression, so that we're proactively planning for learning variability. And as a result, we're developing learner agency as they progress through their educational journey. They're developing skills of advocacy and independence.
That's right. And the concept of universal design actually began in architecture. It was coined by Ronald Mace, who used a wheelchair, and he had to be carried up and down stairs to be able to attend class as a university student. He went on to graduate with a degree in architecture, and he designed housing that could be used and enjoyed by everyone. So we love to talk about the curb cut effect here at Cidi Labs, which is the image on your screens right now. And we love to talk about it because it's a simple example of something that's very powerful. Features like curb cuts are essential for people with certain disabilities, and that alone makes them a fantastic invention that has made the world a better place. As a bonus, they also help other people, like parents who are pushing strollers and people riding bikes. And yes, Amandas who land at an airport, grab their carry-on, head straight to a museum, and rely on curb cuts to haul overpacked luggage across city streets. So when we design for access first, we create experiences that are easier, they're smoother, and they're more usable for all people. Accessible content really does make everyone's life better, and that's the basic principle for universal design. Now, UDL, Universal Design for Learning specifically, applies the same philosophy to education. So instead of retrofitting accommodations after students are struggling, instructors design courses to be flexible from the very beginning. So UDL is built around 3 core principles, which Janet mentioned. Those are multiple means of engagement, the different ways that we can motivate and involve learners, multiple means of representation, the different ways to present information to our learners, and multiple means of action and expression, the different ways that students can show us what they know. And the goal is the same as in architecture: remove barriers early and create learning environments where all students can succeed. Today, we're talking about that first core principle, engagement, and then we'll talk about the others in our future webinars. So engagement is about how students connect with and stay motivated in their learning. In any course, students are going to bring in different interests, different backgrounds, confidence levels, and life circumstances. So from a UDL perspective, engagement means offering multiple ways for students to connect with the material, to feel a sense of belonging, and to stay invested in the course. This can include things like giving students choice in how they're able to participate, using real-world examples, which are always super helpful, always providing clear expectations, and of course, creating opportunities for interaction and also for reflection. So that's the why of universal design, but it's always easy to understand the why. The how, that's where it gets a little tricky. So Janet, can you share some strategies for the how, this really difficult part?
Absolutely. My research actually started with a super common challenge, an accreditation question of how do we make sure our SLO data is measurable, that our SLOs are observable, measurable, and transparent for students. So as that progressed, it then morphed into the idea that UDL is also dependent on our SLOs being transparent for students, observable, and measurable. And SLO is shorthand for student learning outcome, as many of us know. educators and our acronyms, right? It's always a bunch of letters. So that student learning outcome data. And how do we write the outcomes? So again, students can look at that and say, oh, I know what my teacher wants me to do. And at the end of the class, they can say, hey, I did it. I understand that. And they can move forward with that skill and build on it. And I developed Rachel, the curriculum companion, and an accompanying website, coursealign.ai, as an on-demand thought partner rather than recommending yet another training to sit through on a flex day, or one more thing that you have to sit down and read through and process yourself. This is something you can just chat with. You can chat with Rachel at any time to help develop these observable, measurable, transparent outcomes. So Rachel can help you with these ideas. As I mentioned, that challenge with developing these ideas can actually, or these outcomes can be a barrier in terms of engagement. That piece of UDL, Universal Design for Learning, that we're discussing today, when outcomes aren't clear, students have no idea what they're supposed to do. As instructors, if I inherit a class, I don't know what I'm supposed to be teaching, and that may end up becoming just more stuff on the page. I want to give students choice to engage them. I know that's part of UDL, Universal Design for Learning, but if I'm not clear on what the content is, that becomes a lot of choices, endless choices. And that ends up being a lot of scrolling, just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling like Wheel of Fortune. And I have good intentions as an instructor, but that engagement doesn't mean more content. It's about having clarity and purpose and meaningful choices. So choice works when the options are clearly connected to the outcome. And we want students to reflect. That's one of the pieces of engagement. If you go back to the column model from CAS for our Universal Design for Learning, but reflections only work when the outcome is clear. If I have a vague outcome, for example, develop an understanding of various topics. We've all seen outcomes like that in the wild, right? It's okay to be honest. You're among friends. They're out there. You don't have to name names. That's all right. We're my friends, like I said. But if you have an outcome like that and a student is assigned something like reflect on what you've learned this term, they're not clear on what they've learned. So that reflection just becomes busy work. So even with the best of intentions, we have to have, again, transparent, observable, measurable outcomes before we start any of the work associated with universal design for learning. So that's why I built Rachel, the curriculum companion. So I can show you how that works.
We would love to see Rachel. And as Janet is pulling up, Rachel is cute as a cat. Also, you can adjust her level of sassiness. She loves
Absolutely.
puns, and we love puns here at Cidi Labs. So Rachel just fits right in.
Yes, I am a big fan of puns as well. But if you're not, that's okay. You can customize there. So I'm going to ask Rachel just a very general question. I need help developing multiple means of engagement for my course. And she's thinking a little. There we go.
Warming up.
So Rachel has actually divided the ideas within the three subcategories within engagement. So I have ideas for welcoming interest and identities, sustaining effort and persistence, and even ideas for emotional capacity. So if I wanted to dive deeper on any of those ideas, I could just tell Rachel what I want to expand on, and she'll be happy to help and give me a few more puns as well.
We love it, Janet. And you know what? Rachel, in doing that, gave us great ideas for this webinar, and we'll continue to see Rachel giving us great ideas for this webinar. But Janet, also want to say quickly thank you for your amazing work and for highlighting and availing resources for anyone who is eager to learn more about bringing universal design and other best practices to their courses.
Thank you.
And now, as I mentioned before, we at Cidi Labs will be focusing on strategies for building these engagement ideas, like the ones that Rachel just gave us, inside Canvas. We'll look at ways that design can support more effective goal setting and reflection opportunities, provide for choice and learner agency, and optimize support and extension, all from within Canvas. So Amanda, can you get us rolling on this building side?
I sure can. So one of the biggest drivers of engagement is purpose. Students are far more likely to stay motivated when they understand what they're working toward, why it matters, and how they'll know that they're making progress. So as Janet mentioned, they need goals that are meaningful, visible, and connected directly to what they're learning and doing, right? And this is where learning objectives really matter. They act as a roadmap. And as Janet was mentioning, they act as a roadmap for us. They act as a roadmap for our students. They give our students direction, helping answer those questions. What am I supposed to focus on? There's so much stuff going on. How does this activity fit into the bigger picture? Am I even on track? Am I learning everything that I'm supposed to be learning? Right? But engagement doesn't stop at setting the goal. We need to sustain the motivation, and that also requires supportive self-monitoring opportunities. They need low stakes, structured ways to pause, to reflect, because our students need to ask themselves, how am I doing? What's working? Is there anything that I need to adjust? So we have an example here of an instructional page that tries, but doesn't quite succeed to create and sustain motivation through meaningful goals and moments of self-reflection. So the very top of the page, we have an explanation of the lesson and how it's meant to help our students meet the learning outcomes. And we have our learning outcomes right there. And then after the content, there are these reflection questions. And the idea is that they'll help students connect with the material, self-assess their understanding. Great idea. Not so great execution though, because the result is a wall of text, and that can feel really overwhelming and not so much motivating. So instead of providing a clear roadmap, what we've unintentionally done is bury our students under too much information. And remember something that Janet said earlier, reflection really only works when students can see what they're reflecting on. Our reflection questions come all the way at the end instead of being positioned at key moments throughout the learning. So they're not visible and they're not that helpful. We're going to come back to this later. We'll show a better execution. But for now, let's focus on the intentions because our heart was in the right place. And I know that the research shows that we were on track, right, Stephanie?
Absolutely. And I also love Brad's comment in the chat of like, I've never done that before because we all know best intentions. That's what we're all out here doing all the time. So yes, let's chat research on those best intentions. Short and sweet here, but essentially offering opportunities for goal setting plus reflection or goal setting plus adding in that personal connection or personal value was shown to have an impact on student learning and achievement. So there's an undergraduate example there where student GPAs significantly increased after they did an intervention that combined goal setting and an exploration of personal values, but they didn't actually see that same outcome or result when there was just academic goal setting without the personal value piece. And then a study with fourth graders as well found that the act of self-evaluation, when combined with goal setting, increased outcomes for learners. So it's this reflection, this personal connection, opportunity to engage, not just the idea of having the outcome or objective stated as the only piece. Sorry, let me go to my next one. And now I want to say here, kind of funny, but turns out students actually have trouble, monitoring their own learning and checking their own understanding and gauging themselves on their progress toward goals. They don't just perform metacognitive activities spontaneously. Some of you out there who are instructors are like, yeah, I know. Good thing the research told me what I'm already aware of. But the good news here is that metacognitive scaffolding, putting in some supports to help them with that process of thinking about what they're learning and how they're progressing, has been shown to have significant and positive effects on student learning achievement, their metacognitive abilities in other people's classes, you're doing everyone a favor, and their academic self-efficacy, so their belief about themselves. And we want to take those learning objective awareness pieces and provide opportunities for personal goal setting and support learner reflection and all of that stuff we just saw from the research in Canvas. But we don't want students to just gloss right over all of that or feel overwhelmed, right? In the example Amanda showed us, those reflection questions are at the end in the same color font, and I'm just like, I'm so tired now, I'm going to hit next, right? It's the perpetual problem of like, the students won't do it if I don't grade it. Okay, so let's talk strategies for supporting this part of UDL inside Canvas. So the first is to really emphasize those learning objectives in some way and in a consistent way. So using color, bordering, or icons to make the objectives and even the reflections as well visually prominent. And using that consistent piece is really key here because learners begin to understand like, oh, I'm seeing those objectives. I know that those are objectives. I see them all the time with that same color border icon situation. Another strategy would be to allow individual goal setting input. So giving the students the ability to make that personal connection with the objective, with the reflection opportunity. So accomplishing that maybe through a text box, through a discussion, even adding a line on an assignment. So like part of the assignment instructions is just like, at the top of this assignment, write your goal for the assignment. At the bottom, write your reflection. And it doesn't have to be a huge effort, but just a quick way to incorporate that process. And then another great strategy is to make sure that you pair linked resources with those self-monitoring checkpoints. Because what if a student's like, I'm not doing great, I'm not getting to my goal? Well, we can avail resources to them, right? Just in that moment. And while we love those strategies, and you can build for those right inside Canvas, it may be a bit time consuming, or perhaps you end up cluttering your course assignments or quizzes with a bunch of ungraded self-monitoring tasks, right? We want better design. And so the good news is that DesignPLUS really helps you build more effective goal setting and reflection into Canvas. Amanda, can you show everyone some examples?
I would love to. So I want you to think about that first screenshot that we had, right, where we were just looking at that big wall of text with our objectives and our reflection questions, and it was all very overwhelming. And I want you to think, wow, that page turned into this. Yes, it did. It did with DesignPLUS. So now what we have here is a section that is very clearly labeled learning objectives. We're using this icon every single time that we have our objectives. We're going to use the same icon. Students are going to start to expect those, how do I not say objectives again? Those outcomes, right? Those learning priorities. So we have them here. We have aligned our module or lesson learning objectives with our course learning objectives. We have this little hover effect so that if I forgot what my course learning objective, I have it right there. If I need a little bit more information about how it all connects because it's not immediately clear to me, I can just go ahead and see that information. This is choice. So we're kind of getting into our next section, but here we're giving students more information if they need it. And then after I see all these learning objectives that my educator has written, I have space to type my own objectives. What do I want to learn about this lesson? What do I want to do to make sure that I'm on track? Then we have our actual lesson, and our reflection questions are not buried at the end when by the time that we get to them, we're tired and we don't really want to deal with them. They are right next to the learning material. So as I'm reading, I'm pausing to reflect because I'm not doing that on my own. I'm not finishing reading this and thinking, which visual elements draw my attention most strongly? I'm not thinking that. I don't have time. But I have this moment in which I get to pause because that has been built into the design. Now, if you're thinking, Amanda, those questions are great. I don't have time for that. I just don't. I really don't. Well, it's fine because you have the DesignPLUS sidebar. And actually, one of our newest features are these design assistants that are going to help you craft questions. So as you, as a subject matter expert, finish writing up all of that information that your students need to know, you can feed that into this question generator that's going to think about different reflection questions based on that topic. And then you can read through. It's actually going to give you some sort of Bloom's taxonomy verbs. And then you can just decide which ones you want to incorporate. So Design Plus is helping you create those questions that are helping you motivate your students and keeping them engaged. Now, after your student goes through the module and the lesson, we're at a wrap-up stage. We have these learning objectives again. We're reminding students, right, of that roadmap. This is what you were supposed to have learned. And then we're asking our students to again stop, to reflect not only on their ability to meet those objectives, but also to meet the objective that they learned for themselves. Remember the goal that you set for yourself. How are you doing based on that? And then we don't just want them to move on. We want them to self-assess and understand if they're ready to move on. So what we're going to do is we're going to browse some cool content that we can add into this page to help our students ask that question and to provide them more resources if they need them. And so we have this readiness check that I actually got from the DesignPLUS library. So I didn't spend time that I didn't have building this out. I got it from the library. It was already beautiful. And now my students can ask themselves, am I ready to move on? And if I am, great, let's go to the quiz. Let's do great on that quiz. But maybe after I reflected, I realized I'm not where I need to be. So I can link my students to some extra information, extra practice. And if my students are just really confused and they need even more help, they can go ahead and send me a message to schedule office hours or do whatever they need. So there's a lot built into Design Plus to support us as educators, support our students. Everyone's a winner.
Yay! I love it. Thank you, Amanda. And for anyone asking, yes, it is available in the library. And yes, we will send out links for these pieces when you get your follow-up email. So we have to move because, man, we are like spending all our time just like having so much fun together. But I want to move to our second topic, which is shifting into thinking about learner choice and agency. A sense of autonomy or control can really boost motivation. How many of you out there can think of an example where that's been true for you? Perhaps having choice about a professional development topic to explore rather than, having to only do the one that was packaged for you that may or may not be super hopeful or relevant, right? And so these choice and agency boosting elements can be really, really powerful, not only for your learners, but also for you as an instructor by providing that built-in flexibility for your learners without even necessarily knowing what those learning needs are. Now, I want to say this. We've got research that will remind you that students need ability to move around to suit their needs. So we've got this first piece of research here that students reported lower levels of self-efficacy and motivation after interacting with courses rated low in findability. So if they can't move around, find the resources they need, if it's tricky, if they have to click like 7 times to get to the thing that they really needed, this starts to erode not only their motivation to continue, but also their self-efficacy, which is a real tragedy because it means they think that it's reflective of themselves as a learner and not actually just reflective of the design, right? We want to fix that. The second piece is just a reminder that the research tells us, lots and lots of research tells us that learning environments that support autonomy and provide choice have been shown to increase learner engagement and motivation. And now choice sounds really nice, but what might that actually mean in context? Janet, can we ask Rachel for some ideas here?
We sure can, because we want the choices to be meaningful. And as I'm switching over to ask, I'll also pipe in with the fact that there is research to indicate that choices, in addition to the choices, structure benefits most students, and it doesn't harm students who don't need it, which is the minority. So it's a good thing. This what we're about to look at actually benefits most students. And I do want to answer one question that came in about paying. Rachel, the curriculum companion will always be free. If you would like to know more why, just click on the Meet My Rachel right here, and it will explain the story behind why Rachel, the Curriculum Companion will always be a free resource. But right now, we're going to ask her, what are some ideas for incorporating learner choice and agency into the class to increase engagement? Taking a sip of coffee, and now we've got some ideas like framing learning objectives by connecting them to real world applications. We want to make sure there's a clear timeline with milestones so students know that they're keeping up with the course as it progresses. Again, transparent success criteria. What does it look like when it's operationalized? What if it's a pass or an A? What does that actually look like in a course? And then check-in points where students can see that they have progressed and that they can adjust. Design routines that encourage goal-directed planning. These are all ways that students can not only succeed and pass the class by developing skills, but also that self-advocacy, which we want them to develop as well.
Thank you. We're getting lots of love for Rachel. I have a love for Rachel as well. So let's take that into the Canvas space when we're thinking about choice, right? And agency. Here, again, we've got a content page and it understood the assignment. Ha 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 ha. But I mean, it knows one great strategy for engaging learners, which is providing choice for content exploration. It's got 3 ways to take in the content about design curb cuts. It's got an article, a podcast, and a video playlist, all of which, this is a key point, provide the essential information for the learner to progress toward their learning goals. So it's not like, someone's not going to get what they need for the learning objectives by choosing one of these elements. They're all kind of equal in that way. However, without any accompanying visuals, students are left taking in this content, right, and the choices through one means, through reading. And I also want to say here, because they're in a vertical list, I personally have a bias for thinking a vertical list implies order in my brain. It's not always true, but it's just like the natural bias that happens to me as a visual design element. So what can we do? What are some strategies? Let's think about this. In order to improve agency, remember we talked about findability. So one of the biggest things that we can do in Canvas is supplement the structured navigation in Canvas, right? The previous and next buttons through a module with some non-linear opportunities. Maybe that's clearly labeled buttons that get students directly to the resources they need. Maybe it's links, maybe it's resource reminders, right? So having any of that kind of supplemental help for how to move through the course, really powerful. We can also think about when it is a choice, the power of displaying horizontally. Not only does that communicate choice, right, because they're kind of on an equal level, but it also reduces the overwhelming scroll. Because if you've ever tried to provide a choice assignment for learners in Canvas and each assignment element has lots of its own directions, by the time you're done, the scroll is so overwhelming that no one's excited about choice anymore, right? We also want to think about utilizing interactive decision routing. So if these are buttons or if it's a quiz that points students to the resource or the route that they want to take, these could be accordions that you build in through DesignPLUS and more.
Stephanie, I know that DesignPLUS makes it easy to build opportunities for choice and agency to do it beautifully and smoothly. So show us some examples.
I absolutely would love to, Amanda. So here I've got a reminder that universal design for learning isn't just for, you're thinking of younger students or students in your courses. It's also for if you're designing a training course for your instructors to help them learn about learning. Yay! We love models. And so this is an example course design training homepage. And first, we're going to talk about findability. So you can see really quickly here that this homepage has key links, right, to really important elements right here at the top of the homepage in this link grid that, again, you could just add immediately through DesignPLUS. We have some other helpers for non-linear navigation. And I want to say you don't need to add all of these to every page. That would be kind of overwhelming. I'm just trying to show you a menu of options. So we have this link grid that I mentioned that routes directly. We also have what's called the side navigation, which you can just add in DesignPLUS, it'll automatically pull in items from within the module, or you can do across modules to help the learner jump around really easily without having to go to the module page and navigate away. Another one that I'll highlight for navigation is we have a module list. Again, you add the module list and DesignPLUS is automatically generating the names of those modules based on what is inside the course. So this also helps your learners jump to a direct module without having to leave this page. Now, that's helping with findability quite a bit, and that increases my agency to go and move around the course as I need if I'm the learner. But I also want to talk a little bit about choice. So sometimes choices can be highly structured based on what you know might be some needs. For example, in this training course, if someone is new to Canvas versus if they're ready for advanced training, we can use accordions to facilitate their ability to choose their starting path. So for example, if I'm new to Canvas, I can expand this accordion and I can go ahead and get started on the Canvas overview training because that button is linked there for me as my path. That's one way to kind of route people with resources via choice. Another option we have, and we have so many that I can't show them all, but a quick check is a really easy way to do this. So again, quick checks come in with the structure that you need. You can change the icon and the name. So I call this your personalized learning path. Since this isn't actually checking someone's understanding, it's being used as a routing device. And so someone could select the option that best describes them. Maybe I'm new to Canvas and online teaching, not just I'm new to Canvas. And they can go ahead and get their learning map. And again, all answers are marked correct in this quick check because there's no wrong place to be starting, and they get their learning map for where they should go. So again, this increases choice in a very structured way, just says like, hey, where are you and what might you need right now, and allows the learner to choose. It also allows them to maybe select something else. If they say, oh, you know what, actually, I don't need that. They're not locked into a particular path forever and immediately regretting that if they selected the wrong thing. Now, let me jump, sorry. Let me jump to another example here. Remember the screenshot earlier that I showed you called cheerless choice, where those little choices were provided as bullet points? Now they're accompanied by some objectives. Hooray! They're also accompanied by some visual indicators as well as clear buttons to help route the learners to those options. They're displayed horizontally using cards. And I want to say this again. So much of what we're using in this webinar is pre-designed. So these are called the library cards, and they're available in your DesignPLUS sidebar as a template. I did swap out the icons, but they were already constructed. And so now the learners can really get a sense that there is choice here. I also added this little block that's also available, already built, this make a connection block, just as a reminder about reflection, because it's not one or the other. It's not doing choice and reflection in separate situations. They can be together. And one last little bit, because sure, the library cards were pre-built for you, but you can also have a little razzle-dazzle fun if you wanted to create your own flip cards to do the same thing for choice. Again, you can add flip cards to columns here so that they give that same horizontal view. So there's fun things you can do. You kind of choose your level of commitment to building out custom stuff, but remember, this is all really easily available for you inside the sidebar.
We love a razzle dazzle.
Yes.
All right, so now let's shift to another key part of engagement, and that is support and extension. So engagement isn't just about staying motivated, it's also about making sure that every student has the tools and opportunities that they need to succeed. Support strategies can help students access content, clarify understanding, and overcome any challenges that they may face. Extension opportunities allow learners to dive deeper, to make connections, and to apply skills in new ways. And together, these approaches are going to ensure that the course meets students where they are, while also challenging them to reach higher.
Definitely, Amanda. And I know that given learner variability, Universal Design for Learning emphasizes the importance of extension resources as well as support resources to reach that optimal challenge concept. But I also remember as an educator that dreaming up the extension activities wasn't really second nature for me. It totally is for my husband, who's a middle school teacher. He just like lives and breathes curiosity. But that was trickier for me. Janet, I'm wondering if Rachel can help here as well.
Absolutely. And while we're asking Rachel, I can also address a question that came up in the Q&A, which is what is the benefit of Rachel over other AI tools? And so as Rachel was learning, I worked in knowledge about transparent, observable, measurable outcomes based on research from Edelman, Newton, Stanny. She's also has some knowledge built in about culturally relevant pedagogy, course alignment, universal design for learning. So she's got a lot of knowledge built in that it's all the stuff that we're trying to do from several different areas built in. So she can assist with a lot of the things that we're trying to do from multiple lanes, I guess. She's an expert in all of those areas. So that's the benefit of using Rachel over other AI tools. In this case, we're going to ask her based on the outcome, students will evaluate how an author's rhetorical choices convey historical context. What are some ideas for learner support and extension? And just for fun, we're going to get extra spicy, Rachel.
I love spicy Rachel.
All right, so Rachel has given us some ideas. As you can see, she broke it into support, which would be guided analysis framework. She suggested maybe some scaffolded assignments, multimedia resources. We've also got some extension ideas, and this is where I kind of poop out sometimes. Once I got the support ideas, how do I move it forward? But she's got me covered here. With comparative analysis, maybe a research component. And then she's also got me covered with some alignment notes just to make sure that I'm still, whether I'm remediating or extending, I'm still aligning everything with my objectives and my outcomes. And then, of course, she's ready to help me continue on if I need more ideas.
I really wish that I had had Rachel when I was an educator because I needed somebody like Rachel to tell me, Amanda, like these are the resources, but like reel it in. Because what I did was unfortunately something that kind of looked like this, provide support, but too much support. So Rachel would have been good to tell me, calm down, Amanda, calm down a little bit. It's fine. So we had to split this screenshot that you're seeing now into two because it's such a long scroll. As a student, I don't want to scroll endlessly before I can submit my discussion post. I've used Canvas for a while. I don't need a quarter of the instructions to explain to me how to view the rubric or reply to peers. That information is super helpful to my peers who need it, but I want an easy way to skip what I already know and go straight to what I need. With all these resources, as a student, I feel really overwhelmed. The last thing I'm focusing on is the discussion prompt. And I imagine that my instructor knew that this might happen because she rewrote the prompt at the end to remind me that I'm reflecting on Gatsby and not on the resources. So a better example looks a little like this. It's much easier for me to focus on the instructions and the prompt. There's a handy button for me to easily access the rubric, and the resources have been divided into tabs so I can navigate to what I need. I feel supported and I don't feel overwhelmed.
Exactly, Amanda. And I just keep coming back to this idea of like the best intentions, right? Like that was so well intentioned to provide all those support resources and how quickly in Canvas that can become kind of overwhelming. Thank you. And so the research really supports that kind of makeover, Amanda, one that doesn't throw out the resources because there's maybe too many, right? But instead designs for them. And so research on this slide is letting us know that it's important. This is actually the first bullet point is from CASP, which is the organization that created the Universal Design for Learning guidelines and framework. But they say it's important for the learning environment to embed a variety of tools, resources, and supports to promote successful engagement with their learning goal and to ensure learners find challenges that are optimally motivating, right? Ooh, but we just saw an example of why that's so hard, right? So the second bullet point also just kind of adds some detail to that we don't want to just move them somewhere else altogether, like go find the resources over here completely separate, because to enhance online learning outcomes, a lot of research really points out that learners need appropriate instructional support in a timely manner. They need it embedded right where they're learning. And, that can be kind of tricky because here we see some more research on cognitive load reminding us that supportive information actually typically has this high level of interactivity or like requires a lot from your brain. And it can be actually the preference to not present it to learners while they're working on a learning task. But again, that sounds like a design dilemma, right? Again, another reminder here, non-essential or redundant content may direct cognitive capacity away from digesting the most critical information. So this is a task for all of the instructors and instructional designers, is determining what is essential and then what is supplemental, and then how can we design for that in Canvas. So some strategies, right? First is we want to do that hard work of separating and then also clearly labeling essential content from supplemental content. Honestly, headings can go a long way in this. Again, that kind of colored heading, and even using consistent icons that say like, this is the essential versus like, this is supplemental, this might be helpful, right? Those icons begin to be shorthand for learners and they know that they can skip over that supplemental if they don't need it. But even better, we can use things like links, accordions, tabs, and pop-ups to house supplemental content. And again, we want to kind of house it as best as we can where the learning is happening so students can have access to it, but we don't want it to become a scroll fest. We also want to remember to balance review and extension opportunities. And we want to keep access open as often as possible, because you might think that a learner needs support information, but maybe that particular assignment is right in their wheelhouse or something, and they actually want some extension. They're ready for some challenge, right? We don't know for every moment for our learners. So when we keep it open, that allows for learners to self-select. And I want to say this, hopefully by now in Pavlov's response here, you probably know the drill when you see this slide. You can do that in Canvas, not the easiest. So instead you can with DesignPLUS. Amanda, can you show us how DesignPLUS makes it possible and fun to design for optimized support and extension in Canvas?
Yes. And I love what you said, a scroll fest. I'm going to start using that every single day of my life. So here we have a page that was created with DesignPLUS. We are reviewing certain things. We're moving on. What we're not going to do is ask our students, but wait, did you forget what we learned about zebras? And then do a whole scroll fest and write everything that we learned about zebras. Instead, we're going to give our students the option to go ahead and review if they need it. But if they didn't forget about zebras, then they can just move on and keep going. We're also going to give them instructional materials like content, written content and videos. And then if they need more, we're also going to give them those opportunities to go ahead and review even more information. But if they got it, they can just go ahead and move on. So we're giving students choice, we're giving them support, we're giving them extension. It's all related, right? And we're really engaging them. Now, again, thinking about support and extension, here we have this page that is at the very, it's the penultimate item in a module. It comes right before a quiz. I don't want to just send my students to the quiz because what if they're not ready? So instead, I'm going to give them these not graded activities that I was able to build right from the sidebar so that they can go ahead and review their understanding. They can go ahead and check. And if they get some of these wrong, then I can give them some information. So I can link them back to another part of the module, another part of the course that gives them more information so that they can review, so that by the time they go ahead and they complete these questions, they can move on to the quiz. With these interactive opportunities, I can even make it so that I hide the next button until they answer everything correctly. So my students are only going to move forward once they are ready to move forward, once they know that information, because they've been supported.
Amanda, did you say you could just like build those with the DesignPLUS sidebar right in the Canvas
Right?
editor? Are
And
you
they're accessible.
accessible? Stop. Yes, so we love that. We love the ability to resource Sprout to provide that support. Shout out to Brad, who I think is on the call, because he talked to me about some research about dopamine, and I went and I looked it up for our interactivity webinar. And it's totally right, Amanda. If the learners do that practice and then they get it right, they actually have been shown by research to perform better when they go to the quiz, the actual quiz, because they're going in with this lift, like I did it. And even if those are ungraded opportunities, so they just keep going. We love it. We love it. I could talk forever. I know we're like getting close on time and I'm just like still going and going. This happens, put a bunch of educators together. What are you going to do? Okay. So as we are wrapping up, we leave you all with two reminders. One, that there are so many resources available for reimagining your curriculum, your content, your assessments through a universal design lens, including our rather perfect friend, Rachel, the curriculum companion. And two, the second reminder that thoughtful course design and a tool like DesignPLUS that we've been showing you today makes it possible to implement those universal design ideas in Canvas, from goal setting and reflection to choice and agency to support and extension, without some of those usual trade-offs, right?
All right. Thank you to all of our presenters today for all of your time and expertise. And thanks to everyone who attended this. If you want to learn more about Design Plus, you can just go over to our website, cidilabs.com. And then, of course, you can also scan the QR code you see there on your screen and set up a personalized demo. It looks like we have, what, about 4 or 5 minutes for questions. I know we've asked or answered a lot as we have gone along, but with the time remaining, just drop any questions you have in the Q&A you see there at the bottom of your screen. And you can also, of course, reach out to us anytime on our website through contact us, email us at info@cidilabs.com, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. I think we did have a couple.
Okay, someone also just asked if we'll have access to the slides. In the follow-up email that you'll get in the next 2 days, you'll have the recording, and then you'll have a link to the session summary, which will be an accessible document so that you can go through and review all these resources and the material.
That was good. And Stephanie and Amanda, I know one of the things that seemed to pop up a lot in the chat was around accessibility. Questions like, are all of these designs accessible? There being a lot of interactivity in them.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Do you want to do that one, Amanda? You can talk, and I'm going to just like come over to the sidebar.
So our team tests everything to make sure that it's all accessible. So everything works with keyboard navigation. It's all compatible with screen readers. So accessibility is our priority here at Cidi Labs. So you don't have to worry about anything being inaccessible. Everything is good. And we wouldn't be talking about universal design for learning and then say, oh, never mind, you can't use this, it's not accessible. So nothing to worry about there.
And to be clear, the tool is built so that these things are accessible, but I can still make accessibility issues, right? I can make them. And so DesignPLUS also comes with a set of robust accessibility checkers that's actually telling me on this page right now, I need to review my headings because I have a heading issue. This block that I brought in from the DesignPLUS library and the way that I nested it into my content needs to have the heading move over, or I could analyze this and find out, what level the heading needs to be in, which I also love this tool because I was an English teacher for a very long time and I love a good outline and it being structured appropriately. And I think that the way this is set up is so great. So on top of the tool naturally building and giving you supports for accessibility in everything you're bringing in, including those interactives, we also have all of these awesome checkers to help you with accessibility.
Good. And one open question in the Q&A that's just come in from Amy. The quick check and ungraded interactivity is great for review. What about the extension ideas?
So Stephanie had a really good example of a quick check for extension where she was asking not necessarily like what is the correct answer to this, but what is your experience level? What's your comfort level? And then depending on your answer, you got extra resources. So there are ways to use these tools creatively and, make them work for multiple purposes. Also, even if you are using them for review, like the art interactives that I shared, you don't necessarily need to give students links to the course to review things that they already experience. You can also link out to extra resources if they need to make connections elsewhere, if they need to maybe read something else or watch another video that they hadn't encountered before.
Yeah. So I think given that interactive element, right, you could choose to provide the extension resources once the students got everything correct in that scenario, right? The scenario that was brought up with the interactives. But there's other times where, again, you don't want to assume that the student isn't ready for an extension or that that won't be the most engaging way for them to take in the content. And so we can think about that as well on the example that Amanda was showing, where a lot was available to them just on the page. So they could choose to watch more videos. It wasn't based on whether or not they showed a level of readiness. It was just an opportunity that was available to them. Similarly, on that homepage design, someone could have just decided that they wanted to go in the route of like learning more about being an experienced learner. So balancing those opportunities, right? Sometimes it makes most sense to like, I don't love the word, but like gatekeep a little bit on the extension. And other times it just doesn't. It's like providing the opportunity for learners to have access to all of that. So I know we're at time. I did see someone ask about how they can get the other 2 webinars in this series on the registration. You can go to cidilabs.com/webinars and you'll see the other events, but we'll be sending you emails as well. And we'll include the link to register for the upcoming webinars in the follow-up email we send you in the next 2 days. Thank you, Janet, again,
Thank
so
you.
sincerely for joining
And
us.
thank you, Rachel.
Yay! Thank you for having us. Rachel and
Okay.
I are both very grateful to be included.
Bye, everyone.